Everybody, peace. Welcome to the Sorry to Bother You College Football Show, wherever or however you're listening. We're so grateful to have you here with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle. And where else should we start this show except within the SEC? I mean, guys, there is just a plethora of storylines to cover revolving around the SEC, from Georgia, and do they have a chance of making the playoffs still? And Alabama, does Alabama have a legitimate chance of playing for the SEC title? And Texas, is Texas on upset alert during these last 3 weeks? So, guys, we have so many storylines to discuss revolving around the SEC, so we're going to cover all of them. And we're also going to discuss Miami's upset loss to Georgia Tech and whether that has completely erased Miami's chances of making the college football playoff. So we're going to discuss all of this and then some, guys. But before we get started, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all the latest content that we post daily. And if you'd like to gain exclusive content from the Sorry to Bother You Show, you can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Sorry to Bother You Show. That way you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. None of this is possible as you guys are fans, so we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you guys continue to show us day in and day out. With that being said, guys, let's get right into it, shall we? Like I said, the interesting state of the SEC. Listen, guys, after a very exciting weekend for SEC competition, with Ole Miss upsetting Georgia for Lane Kiffin's biggest win of his career, and Alabama absolutely dominating LSU down in Death Valley, the state of affairs going on in the SEC has completely just been exploded wide open. I mean, with Tennessee and Texas and now Alabama, there is a plethora of question marks and major uncertainty as to, one, who the best team is in the SEC, and two, who has a legitimate chance of winning the SEC title game. With the way things turn out now, there could be a very large amount of chaos come Selection Sunday or Tuesday. Not this week, but the last week of the season. Because you could very well see a scenario where Alabama wins out, Ole Miss wins out, and Tennessee wins out, and Texas wins out. And now you have a lot of questions as to one who gets into the SEC title game and who makes the college football playoff. And that's the issue with not having divisions in the conferences. That's why I prefer the divisional setup that the SEC used to have with the East and the West, because it alleviated all of this right here that we have here. But also just shows how much talent there is in the SEC. I mean, we haven't even touched on Texas A&M. My apologies, who could very well have a chance of. Well, they blew their chance, but had a legitimate chance at first. Ole Miss, like I said, LSU. Well, LSU has lost their chance of making the college football playoff and winning the SEC championship game. But listen, legitimately right now, I will say there's 3 teams vying for 2 spots in the SEC championship game, and that's Alabama, Tennessee, and Texas. And some people could want to throw in Ole Miss there, and sure, Ole Miss may have a chance of going undefeated, but there's just so many options going on in the SEC right now, and this, to me, it just shows by far and ahead that the SEC is the best conference in college football right now. And with the AP ranking, we saw that Georgia, after they lost to Ole Miss, dropped all the way down to number 11. And I won't be surprised if the committee ranks Georgia somewhere around there as well when the ranking comes out tomorrow. What the committee has liked doing is, especially with a team like Georgia right now, a team that's on the fray and in all likelihood will lose their next game, the playoff committee likes to kind of get ahead on it. So if they think Georgia's going to lose their game against Tennessee, then they like to put Georgia already on the outs at 11. So that way when they lose, them dropping out of the top 12 is justified. So it saves the committee a bit of headache further along down the road. But now the question becomes, well, does Georgia have a realistic chance of beating Tennessee? And I'll say the answer is yes. And so what happens if Georgia beats Tennessee? Well, then now Georgia now has a legitimate chance of making the SEC championship game. But in my opinion, Georgia with 2 losses now has to go undefeated. They cannot afford any more losses, especially with Alabama and on all likelihood going undefeated. Will go undefeated as well. And then, like I say, still have Tennessee, and you still have Texas as well. But if you had to ask my opinion right now, my perspective, I would say that the teams that will come out of the SEC, as of right now, my perspective, are Tennessee, Texas, and Alabama. But I say Tennessee because I believe that Tennessee is going to beat Georgia when they play each other. Georgia is not the same team that they were in years prior, and it just shows you how difficult it is to be dominant in college football for years and years on end. And that's why more credit needs to be given to the Nick Sabans and the Kirby Smarts and even the Dabo Sweeneys of old when they were dominating college football. And it just shows how much talent there is in the SEC right now. And, a lot of people wrote off Alabama after they lost to Tennessee. But we saw that Alabama was able to get back to the Alabama of old with dominating and running the football. And with Alabama playing defense the way they have been the past couple of weeks, they have a couple of injuries in the secondary, but that secondary has come on strong. And like I've been saying all year, that front seven, you could argue, is one of the best, if not the best, in college football, with their ability to stop the run. I mean, it has completely shifted the tide, no pun intended, of this Alabama team. And listen, I talk about all the time how it takes 4 or 5 years minimum to develop and build culture, establish a culture in a program or an organization. And this is the process. This is the steps that Kalen DeBoer is taking to establish culture within this Alabama team. And this was a good test of adversity for them to really grab this moment and completely shift it into their own. And this Alabama team, when their backs have been against the wall this season, when they performed at their best. And you can tell as you continue to watch them week in and week out, they're continuing to improve and they're continuing to get better. And my question is, if Alabama does get into the SEC championship game, and say for instance they lose, does a 3-loss Alabama team that made it to the SEC championship game still get into the college football playoff? That's another question that we could very likely be having. And some people like this parity, some people like this chaos from the college football playoff, with it being added 12 teams, or being expanded to 12 teams. I'm sorry, but I think I believe it's less about the number of teams in the college football playoff as opposed to just the dominance and the level of talent in the SEC. I mean, these teams are just eating away at each other. And one concern I have is when the college football playoff starts, the SEC has completely just beaten up on each other, but that by the time they get to the playoff, they won't be at full capacity, they won't be at full strength, and so they play the teams from these other conferences, and those teams from the other conferences will be at full strength, and they'll be getting a beaten up, battered down version of these SEC teams. And that's the one concern I have with the SEC being so dominant. I mean, top to bottom, there's no other conference in the SEC in the nation that compares to the SEC. The Big Ten is very top heavy, but you get past those top 4 teams, and there's just the talent disparity drops expeditiously. So the state of the SEC right now is quite interesting, to say the least, and I'm excited to see where it goes and how it ends up. If you guys are subscribed to our blog section, I'll be evaluating the college football rankings when they come out on Tuesday, so be sure to stick around for that, guys. But for now, get your popcorn ready, guys, because it's going to be a wild ride to the finish. But guys, speaking of wild rides, let's look at this Miami and Georgia Tech matchup from last weekend, shall we? And what the impact of that game will have on Miami moving forward and their chances of making the college football playoffs. So, guys, be sure to stick around for that. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed our opening segment, we were discussing the interesting state of the SEC and why the amount of talent and the amount of competition going on in the SEC could possibly have an impact, obviously, on the college football playoff. And in this segment, guys, we're going to be discussing Miami's loss to Georgia Tech and what that means for Miami moving forward and their chances of not only winning the ACC but possibly not making the college football playoff. So as you guys know, Miami was upset over the weekend by Georgia Tech by a score of 28-23, and Georgia Tech completely dominated the game from start to finish. Though the score was close, I don't think the score was quite indicative of how dominant Georgia Tech played. And listen, Georgia Tech just exposed what we have been saying about Miami all along, in that their offense can be inconsistent and their defense is just atrocious. I mean, their secondary is one of the worst secondaries in the country. And Miami finally played a game in which the offense couldn't save them and couldn't get into a rhythm to save the defense. And a lot of people were saying that Miami didn't have a standout win on their resume. And so if they had one loss for Miami, is far more detrimental than to say two losses for like Alabama or Georgia. And I wasn't from that camp. I still believe that Miami is a legitimate team, and I think the eye test for Miami will be enough. I think one loss Miami will still get into the college football playoff, but I do believe that Miami has to win the conference. I don't think that Miami with two losses gets into the college football playoff. I don't believe that's the case at all. Which means that there's much more pressure on Miami now to win out, and it makes that matchup with SMU. I believe that they're going to match up with SMU in the conference title for ACC much more interesting, because now what happens if you're SMU? Obviously, you get an automatic bid if you win the conference championship, and I believe if that's the case, then I just don't see how you take Miami over, the runner-ups in the SEC or even the Big 12, or the Big 10 at that. So, is there pressure on Miami to win out? Absolutely, but Miami has not lost its chances of winning or making the college football playoff, not by any stretch of the imagination. But they do have to win out. There's much more pressure on them to win out. Everyone gets a mulligan. Everyone, with the way the college football playoff is set now. And Miami got it out the way, but they have to win out now. Now the question is Miami good enough to win out? That remains to be seen. Throughout this entire season, Miami has done a great job of responding to adversity, especially during the games. But this was the first time, like I said, that Miami was not able to respond to the adversity, and the offense was not able to get into a rhythm and to make up for the number of mistakes that the defense has made. Cam Ward has to be efficient, has to be effective. The only way Miami is going to win and be successful is if Cam Ward puts up Heisman numbers, which is why many people have Cam Ward as a leading front runner to win the Heisman, because it's so important for him to be dominant for his team to be successful. And is he capable of doing that? That remains to be seen. If you would have asked me before last weekend if I was confident in Miami making the college football playoff or winning the ACC championship game, I would say yes, absolutely, no question about it. I'm 100% confident that Miami can do that. But after what I saw against Georgia Tech, I'm a little uncertain, and I'm less likely to confidently pick Miami now to win the ACC. But I'm not going to say that SMU is outright going to win it. I still, if I had to choose right now, I would choose Miami still to win out and win the ACC. But I'm not saying that with the same amount of confidence I would have said that last week. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Miami still is the leading front runner to win the ACC, or have you guys transitioned over to SMU? Let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear all about it. But with that being said, guys, listen, that's it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful show. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all related content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/sorrytobotheryouLLC/tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans. So we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you guys continue to show us day in and day out. And guys, we'll be back again same time tomorrow with our NFL show as well as our basketball show. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. Until then, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, guys, and peace.